Let's pick up where we left off, beginning with hashing out the while loop. I've literally just had to restart my own Houdini scene, so I fell for my own trap. Because if the condition of the while loop is not being met, it will simply continue looping until it is. And if that never happens, you will run out of memory. We'll unhash it later. Let's start writing the code first. Let's indent first midsection 4 times, another 4 times. We want it to be inside the while loop, so we want to indent it in total 12 times from where it is now. So let's work on the first midsection. If counter is equal to 0, finish with a colon, 4 space indentation. New point is geo.createPoint. CreatePoint is a HOM or Houdini object model function that comes with Houdini, and it creates a point literally in space. However, it will always create it at 0 by definition. Because we've coupled it with a variable called newPoint, we can then call newPoint and do things to it. So let's do that. First, actually, building ID is building ID mid, because our building ID is no longer a base, but it's a mid section. There we go. Now we can go newPoint dot set attrib value, and we're going to be setting the building ID attribute, and the value of that is building ID. Let's do that again. newPoint dot set attrib value. Keep in mind the camel case, building height, and the value that we're going to be assigning to building height will retrieve directly from the building height dictionary. So building height dict, open and close square brackets, and inside there fill in the building ID. And you see that we've just signed up building ID with building ID mid. So building ID mid we set up here, which is building ID +1. And let's make sure that as a float value, it should already be, but just for clarity or consistency's sake, I like to define that too. Let's do that again. newPoint dot set attrib value. We're going to be setting 5 values in total. Let's just copy this line and copy it a few times. We need a skyline height, which is literally skyline height in our code as well. We need up, so we're going to create an attribute on these points called up, and to it we couple the value that we set to up, and we give it the value that we retrieved from up before, and we want a normal attributes for the rotation, which we're going to give the value of the normal we retrieved earlier. And now this is why we retrieved all these values before, because these are the values that we are now setting on the new points. So we've set the attributes on our point, but now we also need to set the position of it. Let's create a new variable, mid-segment height, and that is exactly what we had here. So let's copy this line from float to the second last bracket, Control C, Control V. So we have building height dict. From it in square brackets, we're retrieving the building ID, and that is being converted to a float value if it isn't already. That's that. Then we're going to say position is, so we're creating a variable called position, and we're going to be splitting it up in its component parts, so X, Y, and Z. Position is position 0, or position X, which we're not changing. Then we have position Y, or position 1 in this case, and position 2, which will be position Z. Z and X will leave the same, but to position 1 we're going to be adding building height. So plus building height. There's a little catch here. So we have just retrieved a mid-segment height, which we are not setting here. Why? This is because our base section has a different height than our midsection, and we want our first midsection to be set exactly on top of our base section. So our first new point is going to be set at y0 plus the height of the base section, which we found here all the way at the top in the for loop. In our next block of code, we're going to be then calling the mid-segment height, because we'll be stacking mid-sections on top of mid-sections instead of on base sections. Let's continue underneath. So now that we have defined a variable with the position data in it, we're going to set that. So we're going to say new point dot set position, and this is again a camel case function that comes with the Houdini object model, like so. And inside it we feed position. You could also feed into it a 3-float vector value, but we've just defined that here. So we can just feed into it the variable which will have that value connected to it. And then we're going to be upping the total height with the mid segment height. And we know that the total height we already set to the base section height, and now to that height we're adding the mid segment height because we've just added one section to it. So now our total building height will be base section plus mid section. And we're going to up the counter. Counter plus is 1. So the counter now is no longer 0. So that would be the code for the first midsection. In the next clip, we'll continue with the code for the second and onwards midsections.